Good evening. We're just waiting for the TV to start. Good evening and welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall for our City Council Candidate Forum tonight. My name is Deborah Owen and I'm the Public Policy Director for the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce. The Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce wants to thank the City Council for allowing us to host this event in their chambers along with the City Clerk Tom Greco and his staff. We also have the League of Women Voters tonight, and Betty Oldenkamp will be our moderator. And for those who are in the audience, please know you can ask questions of the council through our process of submitting a question to the League of Women Voters. Thank you so much, and I turn it over to Betty.
All right. Well, thank you, Deborah, and welcome to the 2018 City Council Forum hosted by the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce and the League of Women Voters. As Deborah mentioned, I'm Betty Oldenkamp. I'm representing the League of Women Voters this evening, and I will be moderating this event. We are very happy to have all of our City Council candidates that are present with us this evening. Due to the amount of candidates that are running for the open council seats, we have decided to split this forum into two sections. The first one includes the 4 candidates from the 2 at-large A and B districts. And the second section will include the 5 candidates that are vying for the Central District. Each section will last approximately 1 hour. If you have a question, please write them on the cards provided, hold them up for our volunteers to pick up. Make sure you write legibly, and phrase your your questions for all candidates, as we will not be addressing questions to an individual candidate. And for those of you that are watching live stream, you may submit your questions by emailing them to siouxfallslwv@gmail.com. We've already had a number of questions submitted, so I may be combining some of those and phrasing them together. It is also possible that I will not be able to get through all the questions that have been submitted. If that is the case, please try to speak with the candidates after this event or contact them by phone or email after the event. At this point, if you haven't already silenced your cell phones, we would ask that you do that. We would also ask that while you're in the room here that you not converse with your neighbors. If there is a conversation you need to have, please take it outside to the adjacent room. So our format for this evening is as follows. Each candidate is going to have 2 minutes to introduce themselves, to indicate what district they're running for, and tell you why they want your vote, why they decided to run. They may also take this time to address anything that is of special interest to them. We will then move on to our questions. Candidates will have 90 seconds to respond to questions. There's no rebuttal time. Each candidate will be given an opportunity to respond to each of the questions. I'll rotate which candidate is first to respond to a question. At the end of the forum today, each candidate will then have an additional 2 minutes for a closing statement. They can comment further on any of the issues that have been brought up, or they may choose to address a different topic altogether. So we do not have a timer out in front of us today. The timing device is here. I want to check to see if that is visible. Yeah, okay. There we go. We have somebody in the audience. Green, yellow, red. All right. So, all right. Well, with that, we are ready to begin the forum. So we are going to start out with candidate introductions, and we will start out on my far left with candidate Weiland.
Good evening. I'm Nick Weiland. I'm running for the at-large City Council seat, position B. As some of you may know, I have been a resident of Sioux Falls for most of my life, at least half of it. I was born here. Went to school at St. Mary's and O'Gorman, played basketball and football at O'Gorman, played baseball for the local Post team. My family's always been heavily involved in politics. And I remember one day driving down the road, and it just came to the realization that I wasn't going to run for public office. Well, that didn't happen. It's so easy to get upset with what's happening in Washington and in Pierre, and even to an extent at City Hall. I think that's the reason that I really wanted to get involved again. I've been involved in politics, obviously, with my family for the last 10 years, especially. But I've become increasingly frustrated with how politics in our state has worked, and I think that City Hall can be a good beacon for how to combat some of the things that are happening on a state level. I'm running for City Council because I believe we need someone that will speak for all the people, and currently, I don't see that happening. I think we have a City Hall that has become a little bit of a rubber stamp for the mayor, and I think that we really need to change that approach and try to really figure out how we can make City Hall be the check on the mayor's office. Thank you.
All right, next we will move to candidate Erickson.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you for hosting. Thank you for each of you being here this evening and taking time out of your day. My name is Christine Erickson. I'm the current city councilor for the at-large B position and running for re-election. I was born and raised in Rapid City, lifelong South Dakotan, moved to Pierre for a couple of years and worked in state government, and then came to Sioux Falls. I graduated from National American University, as well as University of Sioux Falls, as I figured out what I wanted to do as far as getting back to school and going back to Rapid City or Sioux Falls, and I saw a great opportunity here in Sioux Falls. I met my husband, Tony Erickson, who is from Sioux Falls, lifelong Sioux Falls, and we have 3 wonderful kids. One, it is his birthday this evening, so I cannot wait to spend the rest of the evening with him. He turned 13 today. I'm running for city council because I feel like we have a great opportunity to make a positive change, not just here at the local level, but also at the state level, collaborating together and working with others to solve the issues that often take place here. Sometimes we look to the state for helping us solve those problems, but government works best when it's done locally. And for me, having this form of government, we are able to make those decisions and not have to always answer to the state, but we're able to collaborate together as well. My husband and I, like I said, we're from here. This has been a great privilege to live in this community. We've seen it change over the years, and I look forward to talking about the issues that are important to each of you. I certainly have issues that are important to me, and we'll address those in the closing if those statements don't come up during the question and answer. Thanks again for being here, and I look forward to talking more about what's important to Sioux Falls.
Thank you, and now we will move on to candidate Paulson.
Thanks for being here, and thanks to the League and to the Chamber for hosting this for us. I'm John Paulson. I'm running for at-large position A. My wife Jane and I are both natives of Sioux Falls and grew up on the playgrounds and parks of our community, checked books out here a long time ago, but have come back to Sioux Falls after living away and really do love it here, and that's a big part of my interest in serving. I'm running for city council because I want to represent the people of Sioux Falls. It's pretty simple. That's it. I want that job. I've had events in my life that have developed a passion for public service. I also believe that my skills and background would make me qualified to serve as a city council member in an effective way. I've had 4 decades of community development and strategic planning experience in a variety of capacities as a healthcare administrator, as a city planning commissioner, involved in a program called Sioux Falls Tomorrow that looked at the long-term vision and needs of our community. also helped lead a campaign to build a new Washington High, and that really harkens back to my initial interest in what can happen if we work together. There are 4 things that are important to me that I'd bring to the City Council as priorities. One is to promote united government, united leadership, and to foster that through a shared vision, common standards and practices. Secondly, I want to emphasize the communication, open communication, to foster confidence and build understanding. Thirdly, to engage the citizens in the success of our community in achieving its vision. And fourth, to work on strengthening for the future the essential services that the city provides. Thank you.
And next, we will move on to candidate Brecky.
My name's Janet Brecky, and just a little bit about myself. I'm running for City Council position A because I have a devotion and passion for the city of Sioux Falls. I've spent pretty much every aspect of my entire professional career serving the city of Sioux Falls in one way or another. I started after law school. I went to undergraduate and law school at the University of South Dakota, and then started as a deputy state's attorney for Minnehaha County back in the 1980s. I served in that capacity as a criminal prosecutor during an intense period of litigation when sexual abuse and domestic violence came out of the closet. That, in addition to a no plea bargain policy, resulted in me trying 25 jury trials in 3.5 years and setting new ground for how child witnesses were treated in the city of Sioux Falls. It was an opportunity for me at the time because that was a period of time when there were few females, practicing law and performing litigation. And so I was able to serve as a champion, for young women and for small children. After that, I left Minnehaha County. My relationship with the city of Sioux Falls began back as an intern when I served as the assistant city attorney's intern during the second summer of my second year. I served there for 18 years under 3 forms of government and 5 different mayors, starting with Noby, Cooper, White, Hansen, Munson. I have 4 different reasons, I have 3 pillars to my campaign, 3 different principles, and it rests on no-nonsense government, focusing on fundamentals, and seizing opportunities. I've got specific programs in mind because of my background with the city and being the one responsible for implementing these forms of government. I have some very specific ideas and plans for the city's future.
Thank you. All right, so we are going to move into our questions now. Again, each candidate will have a 90-second response time. We will be rotating who starts each question, and so our first question is going to be addressed to candidate Erickson, and we will work to my right and then back around. So the first question, as a policymaker for the city, what key initiatives would you bring as a council member?
Thank you. Excellent question. Right now, we've seen a huge increase of drug addiction in our community, and we've seen the meth continue to rise with felony arrests and drug-on-drug crime. We have an issue in this state and city. And so for me, one of the things I've been able to work on, it's been a concept for the last 6 years. We've started to bring community leaders together to talk about this triage concept. What this does is it addresses the treatment. We're not going to be able to arrest ourselves out of drug addiction. The folks need to be able to get the treatment that they deserve, to be able to get back to work, get back to their family, get back to all the things that most of us enjoy every single day of our lives. And so for me, one of my key initiatives is to make sure that happens. Right now, we've got players in the room from public, private, health, sheriff, We've just pulled in some state leaders as well to identify a location and where we're going to fund this. It's going to take some reallocating of funds right now. As you know, budgets are always very tight, but this is a priority, and we need to make sure that we are addressing the drug epidemic in our community. Drugs right now are so easy to get. They've never been cheaper. We're seeing a rise of opioids and heroin in our community as well. And so for me, this is just not something we can stick our head in the sand. We've got to address the youth prevention as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will move to candidate Paulson.
Thank you. Well, I got to start on that with the 4 things I mentioned to you that I believe are very important priorities that I want to advocate for, because they really set the stage for getting the rest done, making sure that we do address the issues as they come forward. And I'll just lift up again what I identified earlier. I'll start with the essential city services, the building blocks that we depend on. The streets and utilities, the parks and public facilities, safety and crime prevention, obviously. Also paying attention to the new developments in housing and workforce areas that are of concern. And I think together we can do a good job of addressing those with an agreement on what our vision is for Sioux Falls and how we want Sioux Falls to be able to perform in those basic areas. Those are important also because they provide the opportunity to develop our community in attractive ways for the people we'll need in the future, and provide a cornerstone upon which we can build across the broad expanse of our community. Going back to the top 3, the working together 3, the use of a common vision includes adopting standards that are agreed to and monitored and are identified for how are we doing, to make sure the public knows and that they're confident that the city's performing well. The idea of information is another one.
And now we'll move on to candidate Brecky.
My second principle is really my reason for running, and it's called Focus on Fundamentals. And I have in mind specific ideas on how to address the public safety, public protection issue. I think that we need to be tackling it on all fronts. I think it's a fallacy to think that you can just beef up the police department and all of a sudden all of your drug and gang-related crimes are going to go away. So I have in mind 3 different areas that I'd like to approach that issue on. One of them starts with public improvement programs that address our deteriorating and mature neighborhoods. And what I have in mind is an expansion of the programs that we already have, Projects Nice and Keep. I have in mind a public-private partnership that allows the city to work hand in hand with business and the private sector through service clubs, nonprofit organizations, in order to upgrade beyond minimum standard, which is what the original programs were designed to do. And if we can do that, and we can keep our neighborhoods from dropping further down and actually rise them up to above minimum standards, that's our best defense to gangs and drugs rooting into our city. And I have, in addition, 2 other programs, which looks like I'm not going to be able to address, but one also deals with how we deal with our mentally ill and our addicts in this community, and to quit treating them like criminals and begin treating them like patients.
Thank you. And now candidate Weiland.
Well, my key initiatives really focus around bringing Sioux Falls into the 21st century. That's participatory budgeting, which brings direct involvement from the voter population, digitizing City Hall, creating our permit process, allowing those to be digitized and communicated, I think, is really vital, and you can see a lot of cost saving there. Transparency in City Hall is absolutely vital. Smart growth, not just growth for growth's sake, but smart growth that's planned out and forward thinking. I think we need to increase well, let me back up. We should expand the drug court that we have here. I think, as some of the other candidates said, we can't just keep putting people in jail. And expand health and human services. And those are my key initiatives cycle.
All right, thank you. We will move on to the next question. This one we will start with candidate Paulson. The question is, can you describe in your own thoughts what tax increment financing is, and what is your philosophy on the use of this tool?
Well, I believe that tax increment financing is an essential economic tool for our community, and one that we need to use to continue the development and growth of our community, using consistent criteria that pertains to the development needs of the community, economic development in general, the ability to address issues that were not able to be accomplished otherwise, and to promote a long-term view for the community to build around, realizing that that is a potential opportunity to be thinking about in the planning and development across the entire city. There may be certain areas of the city that will require special attention in regards to tax increment financing. Housing would be an example, our entertainment district, and perhaps others, as it's been the case in the downtown area because of certain issues with our building conditions. I think we have, again, the opportunity to use standards to make sure people understand and have confidence in how those programs work, and I believe it's an important part of our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Brecky.
I think I can be brief with that question. I will continue to use TIFs, or continue to recommend the use of TIFs when appropriate for economic development purposes. It is one of the few tools that South Dakotans have to use to encourage economic development. It has been used successfully in this city for years in appropriate situations. The new law that was passed this legislative session, I think, will assist in helping us use TIFs for dealing with our affordable housing issues. So it's a practice that I think the city's done well in how it's used it, and I would like to continue to do that in the future.
Thank you. Candidate Weiland.
I like when TIFs are used appropriately. Blight, environmental purposes, I understand that. Where I don't like the TIF is when a company receives this funding when they really didn't need to. Most TIFs, if you don't have the TIF come in, those companies will still build. That's what a lot of the research says. The companies still come in regardless of the TIF. I think it puts an undue burden on our school system, and most of these projects just don't need a TIF at this point. I think what we're seeing is a very open use of the word blight, and I think that's a problem.
Thank you. Candidate Erickson.
Thank you. Tax increment finance is oftentimes misunderstood. We are very conservative in Sioux Falls. When you compare us with other regions close to our size, and even other communities throughout South Dakota, we've tended to be pretty conservative in issuing TIF. There is a but-for mechanism in place that, as you see, the Washington Square building that just went up down the road, they came forward and asked for a TIF. They received a lot of pushback. They hired an economist who proved that they needed that TIF. That project would not have happened without a TIF. The amount of property taxes that will be generated from that when the tax increment district is paid back is a great thing for our community. There were some changes with the legislative session this last year that does expand the use of TIF for affordable housing. It did also create a TIF dashboard, which is great for us to hold the city accountable to the citizens, showing how long is this going to take to pay back? What are you getting for your dollars? In regards to the school district, I just want to make it very clear that the schools are held harmless. This is spread throughout the state, and the schools are not impacted by a tax increment finance. And so that's oftentimes been a little contentious as well, because some think they should. I, on the other hand, do not think that, and I feel that it's spread evenly, and appreciate the value of what TIF brings into our community.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to our next question. This one will begin with candidate Brecky. The question is, do you have any plans that would make city government more transparent, especially in regard to letting and approving of city contracts?
Well, I have plans to make city government more transparent all the way around. So not only just for contracts, but there's clearly, I've been observing the city council meetings since last October, and I'm extremely concerned about the culture of secrecy that is hovering around city government. I began looking into determining whether it's policies and ordinances it's actually been codified, or whether it's actually a result of just bad practices. But I'm continuing to look at that. Whatever it is, I will find it and I will fix it, because I am the one that implemented this form of government. I know where to look, and I know if it's actually been written into policies, and I have the ability to understand some various innocuous writings and understand how to fix this. So it's not only just about contracts, but it's about just the flow of information is not coming down to the council properly, and I'm going to look into that and figure out why. And then also it has to do with the matter of, decorum at the meetings. There's just a lack of decorum in the meetings, a lack of commitment to open meeting laws, public records laws, and just a failure to follow traditional parliamentary procedure. So all of these things the city needs to recommit to, and I understand this very well, and I will show some distinct leadership in this area.
Thank you. Candidate Weiland.
I think what we're seeing here, a lot of RFPs and RFQs are happening behind closed doors, and regardless of the intent there, I think what's happening is the citizens and the media don't necessarily understand what's going on. They don't get the full picture. I think we need to open up those processes. The losing bids should be open to the public. There's just about anything that City Hall does should be open to the public, unless there's some kind of litigation behind it. I'd like to see public input also move to the first reading. I think it makes little sense when it happens on the second reading, because people are already ready to vote on the council, and that's the only time that they get public input, and I think that system really should be changed and looked at to try to make it better for the citizens. The other part that I'd like to implement is participatory budgeting, which allows citizens to vote on proposals. They brainstorm, vote, and you get that funding from City Hall, and I think that could really help with transparency. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Erickson.
Thank you. I know the question was specifically on management contracts, and what I want to communicate is Councilor Selberg and I received some frustration. We pushed back. We really struggled with one of the last management contracts that was brought forward to us at 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, 200 pages, and said, vote on this. And so we delayed that as a council, so we had additional time to research, get our questions answered, and work through some of those problems. So Councilor Selberg and I, we met together, we put our heads together and tried to find one incremental step we could make in this change. We wanted to find one small solution we could, and so what we did is we passed an ordinance that said, City, you have to come to us and do this at an informational meeting, a special meeting, And on top of that, you have to bring the full contract, 7 days at least in advance. Can be sooner, but at a minimum, we felt 7 days was appropriate for us. That also doesn't just give it to the council, it also gives it to the community. It's posted online. Anybody that wants to review that contract, you have all the details on there. What it also does is allows us to ask those questions. When a PowerPoint presentation is given to us, it's not just summarized to what the administration wants to tell us, but also we have the full details of those management contracts for us to make an informed decision on the behalf of the citizens, and you also to get that access to information. And that's what I feel is important that we do.
Thank you. All right. The next question, we will start with candidate Weiland again. The question is, do you have any thoughts on how to increase the amount of affordable housing in our community?
I didn't answer that question, but I will.
You will.
Okay.
Let's go back to transparency.
All right.
My bad. Sorry.
Well, I think we just heard that we've got some work to do, and I think that really illustrates what I lifted up earlier about United Leadership, agreeing on the ground rules that they're going to use to work together and have something in mind, from a vision standpoint. Importantly, I think the standard that has to be honored is to make sure that the process promotes public understanding and confidence in what is happening. And I think if we work together, there's ways that can be done. Obviously, some of them are technical and require ordinance changes. Sometimes it's procedural. But I think there is a sense that is an important goal, and I believe we can get it done.
Thank you, and my apologies, candidate Paulson. We're training some new facilitators and moderators tonight, so that was a lesson in what not to do. Back to the question. Do you have any thoughts on how to increase the amount of affordable housing in our community?
Yeah, well, affordable housing is a huge issue right now, and it's not something we're going to solve completely. There are a couple examples that I like. There's one out of Detroit where they rezoned a parcel of land for tiny homes to come on, and it allowed single people to come in and start their their home life. Another thing that they've done in Burlington, Vermont, the city set up a land trust, and that land trust would then be able to buy the property, the land, not the home, and it allowed families to get into a 99-year lease with the city, and it really was able to increase affordable housing. Jobs are a big part of this. If we can't implement and have good jobs in Sioux Falls, it's really hard to afford housing, and all kinds of different issues stem from that. So those are my two ideas. I think there's a lot of interesting innovation happening in some of these affordable housing markets in the rest of the country, and I think we should look at those and try to learn from them.
Thank you. Candidate Erickson.
Thank you. I said this a couple last week, that we're not going to build ourselves out of affordable housing. We're not going to be able to ever build enough, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try or focus on this topic. We do have a neighborhood revitalization program, focuses on 15 homes this year. It's kind of a piecemeal, focuses on the core neighborhoods. I don't know if that's the best way to focus on it, but it's a way that we're able to take off small chunks and help not just big developers, but some of the smaller developers or those that want to own rental property. That certainly is an option. I think the other thing that we need to recognize as we see our world changing is that the American dream is much different than it used to be. When I was young, I wanted to buy a home, get a dog, get married, have children, all of those things. Right now, we see a lot of people not wanting stuff. They want to live in an apartment. They want to be able to be more mobile and have experiences. So I think we need to embrace the differences of what housing does look like. One opportunity I think that we have is to look at an opportune acquisition fund. Should we take off a half a block or a block at a time to make large changes in neighborhoods and not just the piecemeal throughout our city, but really focusing on what we have available for. Right now, I believe we have 5,000 parcels that are being able able to be developed. So we should focus on what we have available and use that infrastructure that's currently in place for us to make it be the best for our dollar.
All right, Candidate Paulson.
Thank you. Definitely an important project for our community, and one that has been identified, and the work has begun in association with trying to accomplish something from a system standpoint, as it's described, recognizing that there are many programs involved in affordable housing, but the system isn't there yet. And I think we really need to get together as a community to support that effort to provide a system for how we address needed housing development in the future. Obviously, we just talked about the tax increment financing potential. I think some exciting things can be accomplished in regards to mixed income types of development, where we can introduce affordable housing throughout the community and offering the advantages that that will bring for meeting those needs in a way that also provides the families that live there with access to services and schools and the rest. And I think those kinds of themes, or those kinds of ideals, need to be lifted up and factored into the work that will be done on affordable housing.
Thank you. Candidate Brecky.
As city attorney, and then as city attorney, I was the code enforcer for the city. I started code enforcement for the city. They didn't have any when I came over here. And then I opened and operated Honey Baked Ham Company and Cafe for 13 years after I left the city. So all of a sudden, code enforcer became regulated person. And I learned a lot that really deepened the breadth and understanding that I have of regulation and how it adds costs to things. I would like to take a very comprehensive look at deregulation. Just like everything else, the more regulation comes in the form of, health, life, safety issues, but it comes in the form of a Volkswagen, a sedan, or a Cadillac. How much safety do you want to afford? How much safety can you afford? How much safety is absolutely necessary? So I think that is one of the areas, and that whole affordable housing area too, is maybe we should just take a look at deregulation and seeing if there isn't some level that is safe enough, that is acceptable enough. And not only in the housing area, but I would like to look at that citywide and just really take our cue from the federal government in that area. I mean, I know these codes, all of them, inside and out, enforced every single one. And now I've seen it from the other side. I'd like to come in and really take a deep, hard look at all of the things we're doing and see if they really need that government involvement, if they really are life, health, safety issues, and get rid of some of that extra stuff.
Thank you. All right, we will move to our next question, starting with Candidate Erickson. What would you consider to be our highest infrastructure needs in the city?
Well, for me, I think a basic need is clean water. I think all of us think when you turn on that faucet, you want to make sure that it's clean water. And so as we look at some of our aging infrastructure, we need to make sure that we're looking at reinvesting in pipes that are too outdated. We've heard some plans for our water treatment plant as it comes through, that there's some changes that need to take place out there. This is going to take big bucks from the citizens to be able to build more buildings to treat our wastewater, to ensure that we have good water. For me, it's about conservation. What can we do to conserve more water? What can we do to make sure that we can stretch the infrastructure as far as we can go without having to continue to rebuild? And by doing conservation, I'm a big advocate of that. There's been several $1 million invested over the last 12 to 13 years. We saved over 4 million, excuse me, I have my statistic wrong there. I'm sorry, I don't want to misquote that. We had spent $3.2 million invested over the last 12 to 14 years and saved 4 million gallons. Now, if you equate that out per day, that's a lot of money. We don't have to pay somebody to treat the water, build the infrastructure. We don't have to continue to build the buildings, and we can use what we have in place now if we can conserve.
Thank you. All right, Candidate Paulson.
Thank you. Obviously, we need to plan for the future, and as a growing community, we're going to have to add to our infrastructure, and we're also going to have to continue to maintain it. So that's a double factor for our planners to work on, and we know that the sewer system is in need of expansion, and that obviously makes it a priority. I think the other elements of infrastructure, streets and road systems obviously come to mind, are critical for the future development and just the getting around in our community, and those have to be emphasized. I'm impressed that the enterprise system that's used for our infrastructure and the financing of it appears to be working well, and it represents the ability to look ahead and provide for the needs of a growing community. And I think we want to continue to emphasize that kind of model in whatever area we have where we're having to deal with maintaining and expanding really at the same time.
Thank you. Candidate Brecky.
Well, focusing on fundamentals, again, is the second principle to my campaign. And what I really mean there is infrastructure. Again, having served the city and you know, had a service to the city for over a 23-year period, I've seen the pendulum swing back and forth. And it just kind of swung into the monument category. We built these monuments, and now we need to really return our focus to the infrastructure that is facing us. For me, it's streets. And again, I've seen it swing from streets when we actually adopted the second penny sales tax and specifically designated it to streets, to when we shifted it over to the sewers, because after we focused on the streets, we had a problem with the sewers. So I just think it's difficult for me to establish a specific priority. I think it's streets right now. We need to look at the streets, and we need to focus our monies on streets, and we need to focus all of our energies on infrastructure in general, because that, in the end of the day, that's the real reason that cities exist. They exist to provide those basic fundamental services: streets, sewers, sidewalks, lights, water. These other things are on the fringe, and at this point, I think it's really important, particularly with the sales tax revenue decreasing, that we really focus on our infrastructure needs, because the priorities are going to be stretched, and we're going to have to learn how to prioritize well in order to spend the monies that we have.
Thank you. All right, Candidate Weiland.
We have about $1 billion worth of roads in Sioux Falls, and when you think about that, that's our biggest asset. Well, that's also one of our biggest expenses. So I think we need to make sure we are keeping our roads up, building good bridges, and making sure that we're investing in our school system. We need to rebuild our core neighborhoods. This is about smart growth. It's about the 21st century Sioux Falls. It's about planning ahead, and what we choose to spend our money on now, especially with infrastructure, is going to be around for a long, long time. I agree with Christine. Water is really important. I think that's something we absolutely have to put on the front burner. I think cleaning up the Big Sioux is really important. I know I'd like to go swimming in that one day, and currently you can't. That's not okay. Yeah, again, I think it's about smart growth and planning for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, the next question, we will begin with Candidate Paulson. The question is, the city bus system is not a predictable means of transportation for the Sioux Falls workforce. What changes would you recommend to make it a reliable mode of transportation for the city?
Thank you. Obviously, the transportation system is something that a city depends on, and that includes the mass transit, the bus system that was just identified. Spending some time trying to understand how that is being affected by our growth, and also challenged by the fact that our community is not a dense one. The population is very spread out, which is an additional challenge for operating an efficient bus system. I think there's new ideas in how transportation can be provided, and we need to explore those depending on the types and sizes of vehicles, the way that the bus can be used or accessed, the opportunity to bring in other organizations that might be able to provide a service more efficiently than the bus system can at its current structure. The thing that really impressed me about the situation we're in with our transportation is that in most other communities, that's an opportunity that's used significantly by the people that we want to recruit to our community. They're used to using those systems where they're living now in Minneapolis and elsewhere. And if we're going to get them here, we're going to have a system that they want, and that's to build on our past and create a better future for our transportation.
Thank you. Candidate Brecky.
I think that the transit issue, it's a sticky wicket. It's an interesting problem, and I think that we're on the cusp of solving it. There's some issues out there. There's some potential in the future with things like smart buses, driverless cars, these automatic rescheduling systems. In the meantime, however, we've got a very expensive system, and we're having trouble reaching the outlying areas to serve our population. However, it's a fundamental commitment that we have to make. We financially need to commit to serve that population in order to keep our city strong, because they are the population that needs that service. One of the things I would like to explore is a voucher system for the outlying areas. I'm wondering if this might not be possible to keep the core, strong system in place, and then because of the, existence of Lyft in our community and some of the other services that we have, if through some sort of voucher system that we might be able to provide those services until we can come up with a more electronically efficient means of providing the services in the future.
Thank you. Candidate Weiland.
Well, like Mr. Paulson said, I think public transit is vital to bringing in the right kinds of jobs and companies to our city. A lot of these people have been in bigger cities. They rely on those systems. And if we don't have them, we're not going to get those contracts. I have a friend of mine, his name's Jeff, and he was really upset when the city chose to add 25 cents to the paratransit fee. And I think that those kinds of issues are ones that we can address on the city council, and they have a big impact on our lives. We need to move to a grid system so these outlying areas aren't being lost. It doesn't make any sense to put affordable housing where there isn't a transit system. It's just one of those things that will help us get to this next level, this 21st century Sioux Falls, which, this is about all of us. And even if you don't use the public transit system, it benefits all of our lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidate Erickson.
Thank you. The bus system is an important issue to our community. It's very expensive to own and operate large buses when gas is going up. It just doesn't make sense how we do it right now. We need to be looking at other communities, how they do it, put our heads together to see if we can come up with better workable solutions to make our bus system work more efficient. If you need to get to work by 7:30, most people in town can hop in their car and get there within 15-ish minutes, I would say. If you need to take the bus system, you're going to have to plan that much further because it will take you a good hour. You might have to transfer buses. That doesn't make sense. We're not helping people get up to that next level that they need to be to work on time, to maintain that job. What if you miss the bus? There's so many things that go into play here for our workforce that we need to be addressing this. I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to continue to bring people together to find these workable solutions. With the federal money coming in slower and slower, we need to solve this sooner than later because the funds are drying up. They're just not coming in like they used to. And for our workforce that relies on this, we need to make sure that we're keeping a watchful eye on this and keeping the rates low while making it more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to move to our final question for this section. This one, we will start with candidate Brecky. What is your plan for the financial security of Sioux Falls?
My plan for the financial security is really related, for me, to the structure of government. And one of the things that I've become aware of as I've gotten back into observing and understanding how our city government is functioning, it's become very clear to me that the city council has not been lifted up to the full value of the policy-setting role that they're supposed to be performing for the city. This is a strong mayor, policy-setting council form of government. The city council has significant policy-setting authority. They have all of the legislative responsibilities, all of the revenue-generating final say, and all of the final say over budget and CIP. And yet the city council has never been able to rise up and lead the city in this policy-setting way. The reason I say that this is part of my financial plan is because it's going to become increasingly difficult for the city to prioritize things without having in process a long-range strategic planning citywide process is what I would propose that the city adopt by ordinance so that the city can effectively set its priorities and actually assist the mayor and the city in setting its budget and CIP. And by the city council actually creating the policy through this process, which I see as being a long-range, again, strategic planning process citywide with maximum public involvement and maximum transparency.
All right. Candidate Weiland.
I think what we need to focus on are jobs, public safety, transparency, keeping the youth, and digitizing City Hall. Jobs are so important. Not enough people are getting paid right now a living wage. If we want to have financial security, it's all of us that need to have financial security. Public safety is a huge issue that I think we're going to have to address as we grow. And being smart about how we communicate, tackling things on the front end and not on the back end is going to be vital. Keeping the youth here. We need to listen to our youth, what they're wanting and what they need. We have far too many people leaving our city right now, and I think we have to actively recruit them to stay. Digitizing City Hall will save a lot of money. If it's the permit process or other happenings that go on, being able to utilize the technology that we have is vital, and we're not doing that today, and I think that will save a lot of money in the long end.
Thank you.
Can I ask you to repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Sure. What is your plan for the financial security of Sioux Falls?
Thank you. So the City Council a while ago passed a resolution to require the administration to have 25% reserve. It's a resolution, so it doesn't have a whole lot of teeth in it. I recently looked at putting this into ordinance to maintaining that financial stability, knowing that you as a citizen, you know that you have 25% in reserve for a catastrophe that may happen or something that we need to utilize funds for. I was met with some challenges, so I'm still trying to work out a way that we can put that into ordinance to give it a little more teeth. Oftentimes, the budget that comes in front of us is built like a deck of cards. You start removing a piece here and there, and it slowly starts crumbling. So for me, it's important for us to be involved in that budgetary process. We, as a city council, as we work through that budget, we're looking at things that are important to us. We have priorities as well, and so one of the things that we did this last time, there were several cuts to nonprofits. We were able to make that neutral, revenue neutral, and refund some of those that do wonderful things in our community for the most vulnerable in our community as well. So I think it's important as we talk about our budget that we make sure that our budget is continually balanced. We make sure we have that 25% reserve, and we as a council expect that from the administration when that budget is brought forward. We need to continue to find ways to make government as efficient as possible. As our city grows, we have to do more with less, and I feel like, thank you. Sorry.
You.
Thank you.
Candidate Paulson.
Yes, I think Councilor Erickson's example is a good one with regards to setting standards for our financial planning and setting minimums with regards to what we want to have in place from a financial security standpoint. Active financial management is important also, and we need to provide the ability to facilitate that. The city has saved millions of dollars refinancing debt here in this last year, and I think we need to make sure that it can continue to do those kinds of things. And so what does that take? That's where I think we get the financial security. It also impacts what we do in the short term. Right now we're experiencing a kind of a bottoming out of the sales tax revenue, and where is that going, and how do we plan for a recovery in that regard? So I think the combination of establishing standards, again, back to making sure that they're understandable and build confidence. I'm sure everybody would have a different number of what they think the city's debt should be, but the city's going to have debt. And it will be okay if we say that it is from the standards that we're operating under and that we're able to finance it in an efficient way. Just as we've done recently, like I said, with this opportunity to do some refinancing.
Thank you. We are going to move to closing statements. Again, each candidate will have 2 minutes for their closing statements. This time we will begin on my far right with candidate Brecky and work to the left, my left.
I guess I would close by saying my main reason for running, after having had a previous relationship with the city, is I'm energized by some of the successes that I was a part of being in the nucleus of 5 different administrations. And I want to carry on that. I have some very specific ideas which it's difficult for me to explain with a 90-second or 2-minute time frame. But I want to address the core issues. And the core issues to me are our growth issues. I want to have a clean, safe, diverse city. I have specific programs for each of those 3 principles. And I would like to have the time to explain those to any of you who are interested. But in addition to that, I want to fix what's broken in our government right now, and that is that the council has not become the true policy-setting body that it needs to become. And the mayoral position has encroached upon the council's power, and the council is constantly in a reactive position to the mayor and the mayor's budget. We need the council to tell us what is our #1 priority. Is it public safety or is it economic development? Nobody knows because the council is not performing that function. And how you correct that is you, by ordinance, you adopt a long-range strategic planning process that's completely transparent with maximum opportunities for public involvement. Once you do that, the mayor and the city council will begin talking to each other in an intellectual way as they decide what our priorities are, #1, #2, #3, and then you have action plans and goals and objectives, and you then when you pass your budget, that's when you actually implement your long-range plan. And I think that cities that have this form of government, when they do that, they are the most effective in leading their city forward as one common government working together, city council and mayor side by side. That is the biggest piece of the puzzle for me, that if I can come in and do that for this city, I think that we can rest assured that this form of government will serve us very well into the next decades.
Thank you. Candidate Paulson.
This is a really critical time for Sioux Falls as a community and also in terms of its city government. We've had successes. We need to focus on maintaining the momentum that will enable those to continue. And we also need to manage our growth so that it can provide and produce something more for the citizens of Sioux Falls, and we should focus on that. Also, there is a need for continued development and investment, and that is a combination of the community and the city looking forward to what is going to be required as we continue to grow. And that's what excites me about the opportunity to serve as a city council member, to represent the citizens of Sioux Falls and the important decisions that will be made about that, how we come together, where does the city link up with the community at large, how do we promote the public-private partnerships that we have been well served in over the years. For me, the ultimate opportunity that we have as a community is to participate. And what I want to do as a council member is find ways where there is opportunity for citizens to be part of achieving the vision that is there for our city, and that they feel like it's a meaningful opportunity for them to take part in. The opportunity that provides then is to facilitate moving forward with the confidence and understanding that progress requires. And I think back to my 4 items, that is a very key and fundamental one to build on. We need to have the information to be confident and understanding of what our city is doing and needs to do. We need to have that united leadership. We have the opportunity for citizen involvement, and then we can really work and continue to strengthen those things that we depend on that the city provides, and those aren't going away. We need those, and we need to be able to work together to accomplish them. I think the best way to say it in conclusion is what we do together will set us apart.
Candidate Erickson.
Thank you. Thank you again for all being here. 3 of the things that are most important to the reason for my running for re-election is, 1, the drug addiction, which I addressed, infrastructure as well, which we talked a little bit about before too. The other thing is jobs. We need to be more aggressive in this area in our community. We have 2 great areas, Southeast Tech and the University Center. There's been some talk of a community college in Sioux Falls area. We need to be embracing this. Find ways that, you know what, not everybody wants to go to a 4-year degree school, get a 4-year degree. Not everybody wants to go further than that. So what we need to do is we need to be in those high schools. Our counselors are so stressed right now the way it is that they're oftentimes just making sure those kids get through school each and every day. If we can identify those that want to get a certificate, want to get an associate's, what can we do to make sure that we're working on that workforce? I had the opportunity of serving on a University Center Advisory Steering Committee here just a few weeks ago, and this is an area of focus. This is an area we are serious about doing here in Sioux Falls that I think everyone in town really should pay attention to. This is going to get people in that workforce to the next level and being a good citizen in our community. I want to address that. What excites me the most is bringing people together. I love identifying a problem, finding a workable solution, and yes, sometimes that does mean compromise, and it does challenge us from time to time. But if we can sit around a table, address the needs in our community, find workable solutions, and come out with compromise, we're going to be able to move this community even further than we've come over the last several years. Thank you again for your time, and thank you for being here. I look forward to talking to more of you after this.
All right. Candidate Weiland.
We really need to grow our middle class. We need to provide living wage jobs and good health and human services. I will fight to increase transparency at City Hall. We need to change the way we handle RFPs and RFQs. Like I said before, when they're behind closed doors, it really just doesn't do our community any justice. We need a counselor that champions citizen input, and I believe one of the processes I'd like to bring to the council is called participatory budgeting, like I said before, which allows citizens direct involvement with the city. It's direct democracy. I also want to prioritize public safety. It's time we start treating our fire department and our police not as a business. They shouldn't be run as a business, and we should listen to what they have to say, because they are very smart and very good at what they do, and I think that gets lost sometimes. Sioux Falls is in a very interesting time. We're growing very fast, and with that, we've had a lot of development, but that development hasn't always been smart. I think the focus needs to be put on smart development, forward thinking, not just development for development's sake, and again, looking at downtown as an entertainment district, looking at a more walkable city. I think these are all really important processes that I hope to bring to the City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. We would like to take this moment to thank our at-large A and B candidates, not only for their contributions to this evening's forum, but for their interest in serving our community. Let's give them a round of applause. At this time, we're going to take about a 5-minute break while we switch our candidates up here at the dais. We would ask at this point that the Central District candidates come forward. As we may have some changes in our audience membership as well, we are asking that anyone new submit a question, or those of you that are remaining, if you would like to resubmit a question, please do so. And with that, we'll move. Thanks again.
Hi, Janet.